Sure.
I like that you got this Swedish hat on here.
Hey, thank you.
I think it's for a reason. And, I wore my winter cap here and a little bit of barrel and beam from Marquette. So I'm thinking
Sure.
north. And,
Hey, good.
I recently realized that there's a term that is closely related to north. And we already touched on it earlier in the show here. We've touched on third places. We've touched on this is where the trees begin. So let's really bring it forward here. What's another word for north?
That's a great question. I would say Nord.
Nord?
Yeah, N-O-R-D, Nord.
So if hypothetically you were going to open a bar or a cocktail lounge or a third place, what would you name it?
Probably something with the word Nord in it. I think talking about connection and building community, maybe the word social.
Awesome.
Maybe put them together and start a place in Midland called Nord Social.
That's awesome. And just last week, we talked about the Center City corridor. I had Mike on from Isabella Bank, and we talked a little bit about the future of Center City. And my office is on the Circle at the Midland Area Community Foundation. And just earlier today, I walked around the Circle, and not always the easiest walk around that Circle nowadays, but we're hoping that could possibly change here in the near future. But you walk around that Circle, and I went and got a delicious pastry over at Sergey's Bakery, and
Sure.
I thought to myself, how great would it be if we had some more spots in this area? So, so let's break it down. North Social coming soon, huh?
Yes. Well, and I think, certainly Center City. Very proud to be joining Center City. I think there's been a lot of intentional effort by business owners, by the city, by nonprofit and philanthropy, investing in that area of the city for years. And it's been underinvested, quite frankly. I think there's been a lot of people that have changed the buildings into different areas, but by and large, there's been just kind of underinvestment, especially for where it's at and the traffic volume that's on Saginaw and its connection to a lot of the neighborhoods. So that was what attracted me ultimately to want to buy a building on South Saginaw Road, 415. South Saginaw Road is the one that I purchased last year. And I had some ideas around a third place of sorts, something that might be more cocktail inspired or neighborhood bar or maybe a little bit of a hybrid, trying to kind of find what niche would really fit within Midland. The Max Loves Midland Show actually got started last year. And I believe one of your first guests, Brad Tunney, was on, and he was talking about just a simple intention of wanting to invest in the community that's really given back to him in a lot of meaningful ways. So him and his wife, Haley, I had known as really just acquaintances. But then you mentioned to me that Brad is someone that I might be interested in wanting to talk to about partnership on getting something like this off the ground. And so we met last summer to have some conversations and really developed a very close relationship that's led to a business partnership to be able to start Nord Social, which we're thrilled that we're announcing for 2025. It'll be happening this year.
I'm so excited to spend some time at Nord Social, and you mentioned the Max Loves Midland Show being a part of this, and it's honestly my favorite thing that this show could have ever done. And if there's one thing that we can say why the Max Loves Midland Show is successful, it's bringing this together. And if there's a business opening in the community, that's worth it. That's going to provide places for people in a place where a lot more housing's being built. There's going to be more people there. It's going to be a walkable spot that people can get to. Yep. And it's just going to be an incredible thing. And there's another lesson here too, because Brad and I talked pretty extensively that day, both on the show and then a few days prior with our pre-interview. And in that pre-interview, he really spoke about wanting to make a more solid investment in the community and, setting his roots here. And he chose this place and he believes in it. And then on the show, I always ask, looking forward to the future of Midland, what's your one thing that you really want for this community? And he very specifically states that he wants a space in Center City in the Circle area that he can walk to, that he can walk his dogs through that area and a place that he can gather. And one of the big lessons right there was, and I've known Brad for years. First of all, talk to your male friends. Male-to-male relationships are always hilarious with how much we don't talk because so much came out of that conversation that I didn't understand. We just didn't talk about the Pistons the whole time. So that was one lesson. Hey, talk to your friends out there, guys. But then being able to connect the two of you and you two hitting it off and being able to build this place, it's no one can ever say that the Max Loves Midland Show isn't successful just because of that.
True.
But it's going to be an amazing spot. So what's it going to feel like? What's the vibe going to be like in Center City now at Nord Social?
Sure. So I'll talk about the entity's identity. So really, we did really want to be intentional about the use of the word Nord because one of the things that I've witnessed in Midland is as we're sitting here on a cold January day, there's a lot of thought around just struggling through winter. and not necessarily thriving, or certainly seasonal depression is a very real thing for a lot of people. And it's tough. It's very tough to go days and days without sun, or to have ice on the roads, and deal with all that, and school closings with snow days. And, the list goes on and on for inconveniences that the winter can kind of bring to us. One of the things that's always impressed me about a region of the world that's done it very well is the Scandinavian and Nordic countries. They really lean into it because they know their geography is just something that's the reality to them.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of options for many people in Midland to fly south to snowbird, or to otherwise escape down to Florida or other places that are warmer. That's a very privileged thing that a lot of people do. But then there's a lot of people around here that don't necessarily have that, or if they do, it maybe only comes every couple of years. So I've always wanted to be intentional around a project that was going to bring opportunity to the community to be able to think differently about winter, and to do it in a very tangible space that really leans into embracing it, while also not diverting from fantastic spring, summer, fall seasons that we also really get to enjoy in Midland. And so Nord is really a nod to the Scandinavian thought process around really thriving in winter. And I can think about like the Danish concept of hygge, which is around creating coziness and warmth, togetherness. There's Norwegian ideas around being intentional to get out into the weather. Certainly with Swedish concepts too. Swedish fika is another thing that I know some businesses in the community coffee houses largely have kind of pushed at different times, which is around being intentional to leave your work if you can and go grab a nice coffee and a pastry, and just kind of have a little bit of a moment to kind of collect yourself, maybe do it with a friend or a coworker, and just kind of have a little bit of an outing. But I think there's a lot of concepts within the Scandinavian cultures that we can really bring to inspire Nord to do it in a very local context, because we know we're in Michigan. There's a lot of fantastic things happening in Michigan. There's lots of brands of like akavit and beer and other things that we can bring into the space that are Michigan based. But I think one thing that we miss that maybe Minnesota does better than Michigan is really this idea of, look, winter's here for us every year. And let's try and be very intentional about how we can all thrive in a way that really leans into it. And so that's a big part of the identity and the space that we're trying to create by Nord. One of the other things I'll talk about too is the building that we purchased had kind of small windows up front, a little bit of a narrow door, not a lot of daylight. That's something that's very critical in interior design around northern climates, and really being able to thrive is bring as much daylight in as you possibly can in order to be able to have that natural light, which is very important in the winter especially. But I also think it makes what Nord Social will be as a bar different from a lot of other places, because I think a lot of times just naturally, because of how bars have functioned maybe in the U.S. for a number of years, there were kind of these low-lit darker places where there's sort of this like concept of like what's really going on in there type of thing, and that's not really what we're trying to create. We want to create something that's warm, it's inviting, it's where you can see people that are in there, a space that's not encouraging heavy drinking, but really just being intentional around creating experiences that are going to bring people together, and to do that in a way that also highlights interior design that's very natural based and Scandinavian inspired overall. So those are the things to expect with Nord Social. And I hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish.
Subscribe wherever you consume media. Max Loves Midland is your entertainment, resources, and collective improvement hub for Midland County. Plan your next adventure in Midland at maxlovesmidland.com.